Hey everyone, and welcome back for another week of 3PL live sessions. We weren't around last week for the holiday. I'm here with myself, Cameron Robertson, and also my co-host Michael Sternberg. Mike, how are things going on your end?
Good, man. It's coming back after a long weekend is always, like it's almost like the weekend's too long for me, at least. I'm sure you agree, right? It's like, okay,
Yeah,
I got to get back. I need everyone back. I got work to do. So, it's been busy, but busy good. How was the holiday, man? What'd you guys do?
it's good. We went camping in Point Magoo over in Malibu, and it was kind of interesting. We got to watch a Firefly aerospace rocket go up that was delayed. So seeing that right on the beach at night was kind of magical. Being on the water camping and then seeing a rocket go into space with the kids. So it was a lot
Dude,
of fun.
the picture you sent me, I'm not joking, is one of the best pictures I've seen from an iPhone or any camera phone ever. That was really, really cool.
Yeah, it was a really neat experience. We watch them all the time. You watch them too. Being here in
Yeah.
California, they're launching all the time out of Vandenberg. So, what did you do? What did you do over the long break?
Um, no surprise to you. I smoked some meats.
Smoked some
Um,
meats like
yeah, I
Zuckerberg.
made yeah, smoked some meats. I did not use Sweet Baby Ray's. Um, no, I smoked a brisket and a couple racks of ribs on the 4th, and then we had a freaking bounce house in my front yard for a week straight. And I live on a densely packed cul-de-sac with many, many kids because we rented it just for the 4th. But with the holidays and them being so busy, they dropped it off on Monday and didn't pick it up till Sunday. And it's great in theory. And I know the kids loved it. But having 15, 20 kids in your backyard or in your front yard for 7 days straight is a bit exhausting. So it's been quieter this week at home, which is nice. But yeah, holiday was good, man. Who's joining us today? You want to let him in?
Yeah, absolutely. We want to welcome Curtis Garrett to the stage. Curtis, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for letting me in. Happy to be here.
What's up, man?
Curtis, a lot of us know you within the industry. You have a tremendous amount of experience in the LTL space, but do you mind taking a moment, kind of introduce yourself, how you got started in this industry? What's your background like that got you to where you're at today?
Yeah, happy to do that. Accidental entry into the industry, like you often hear,
Yeah.
and literally just opened my eyes, and here we are, 17. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, I just needed a job at the time. I knew somebody working for Old Dominion Freight Line, and got in there, and had no like trucking or LTL background at all. Wasn't in the family. Um, but started learning, and just I don't know, I got hooked. And it's really, I think it's the combination. Like, I love numbers, I'm a number guy, but it's got to be directly correlated with real world, activity and stuff. It can't just live in a document or on a spreadsheet. um, so that just lights my brain up. And yeah, that kind of started the path towards, spent some time in operations, drove for Old Dominion, was a pickup and delivery local driver in Columbus, Ohio for a year. And then got into weights and inspections, which kind of started my path into the pricing and profitability side. And then the last 8 or so years, since 2016, I've been kind of on the managed transportation, 3PL technology consulting side. And as of just March this year, I'm fully on my own and have a few different projects. Just a kind of a cool portfolio of a tech product, some consulting, some services, some advising. Just having a blast. Got to pinch
Uh,
myself.
yeah. I mean that's awesome that you took the leap of faith into your own thing. What made you drive to wanting to start your own company? There's a lot of people who never want to do that, and then there's a group that end up doing it. What drove you to get there?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it was honestly just a lot of little things over the years. Like, I wasn't that natural, future entrepreneur. I didn't have a, newspaper empire in my neighborhood as a kid. And I just slowly gained confidence, gained gain knowledge and, the how I was making a living and the industry, the LTL market. I kind of I try to bring like a creative streak to anything I do. I care a lot about, design, the quality, whether it's a process, a checklist, a presentation. I really care about design and making things look good and fit good. And yeah, it just kind of, I guess, ended up this way. I'm an older, I'm 39, so I'm not that young college dropout founder type thing at all. But basically, I think the market and just my own internal feelings kind of told me it was time. And so I jumped into it. And
Nice, man.
I've already crashed and burned a couple times, but I'm learning and,
that's
still
the cost
able
of
to
tuition,
pay
right?
the bills. Yeah. Yeah, it gets real.
Curtis, let me ask you, man, so you made this leap and you said you've got a few things that you're working on and a few projects. Can we talk a little bit about each of them? I know you got like the Understand LTL and you've got the rateHERO and you said you've got some consulting. How does this all come together and what does each project bring to the table for the market?
Yeah, I'm trying to really like focus small, like narrow and deep. And so, I don't want to spend 10 years building a big brokerage and getting, enough people and revenue and resources to then start attacking, problems. That's kind of what I've always seen at the companies I've worked at. There's always this, we need to get to this list, kind of like your average tech roadmap. It's like stuff just continually gets bumped because you've got the bugs, you've got new development, new customers, integrations. Like it's just this cycle of keeping the lights on typically. So I just wanted to start on the other end and like things like just keeping up with all the carriers' rules, tariffs, and how those change, when they change, what do the changes mean, how do they compare with their competitors. Like that's something, in my role as like say a VP of LTL at a 3PL, it's my job to stay up on all that and know that and make sure my team knows that. But no VP of LTL, sorry, has the time to like deep dive rules tariffs. Like that's a whole product in itself, is just somebody or some company, keeping up on that and making it easily digestible and things like that. So what we've attacked, we've got a rules tariff, repository that we're going to continue refining and working on, kind of make it a little more user friendly. We're trying to kind of smooth the LTL process, in reference of like the customer experience, how you engage with it. There's all these drops and bumps. Like if you're talking, as a shipper, my freight is an inch longer than I thought. Now that's, $200 more for an overlength, or there's just not a smooth transition from different levels, whether it's, pricing, invoicing, damage, exceptions. Typically it's, if something goes wrong, it goes really wrong. So just really trying to find those narrow little gaps that we can come in and fill. Just to mention another product we're working on is LTL routing verification, and we're solving for basically LTL carriers being mistendered or tendered in error shipments that they either cannot or don't want to service, and that's based on the locations that it's either picking up or delivering to, the day of the week, embargoes, do not service lists, Home Depot, big retailer routing guides. There's all these layers and kind of logic to say, okay, even though I got a price from this carrier for this shipment, you got to remember that price is only based off zip codes, weight, and class typically. So it's not based off a location. And so you get a price, you give it to the, one of the better price carriers, and it's not a guarantee that they can pick up and deliver and fully execute that shipment. So this is basically making sure the right freight gets aligned to the right carriers. So that's called Ship Test. That'll be out in the next couple months. So
Nice.
hopefully that's not everything, but that gives you a flavor of kind of how I'm approaching, tackle small but deep problems, kind of, develop and own that category, hopefully. And then just, keep stitching kind of an ecosystem of products and services together.
That's some incredible stuff that you're working on. It's for a lot of brokerages, I think this is going to be a very big value add for them. And I think a lot of what you mentioned during what you just talked about is a reason why people most likely shy away from LTL. In your opinion, why do you think so many companies in freight shy away from LTL and focus on the other modes of transportation like truckload?
I mean, it's an easy answer. It's because it's not customer centric. It's the customer experience as an average, as a whole, is not great. And I think I was just thinking this yesterday. Actually, I was driving home from somewhere. I think I'm kind of like transitioning to. I've been kind of in this chapter of here's what all these shippers and brokers should be doing, and just kind of, repeating. You need dimensions, you need this, that, and I think I'm realizing, it's our job as a market, as an LTL market, and the providers within it, to make it somewhat, translatable and easy to engage with. And there's certain pieces of information you need as a carrier, but we definitely just everything from carrier websites to, bids, RFPs. Most carriers out there, I would say, if you look at the top 20 LTL carriers, they've got the operations nailed. They're great, doing what the core of their service is. There's just a lot of stuff, on the periphery that can be improved, and that's what I want to focus on. But to answer your question, it stings at LTL. There's a lot of moving parts and a lot of potential paper cuts, and that scares people off. So
I'm curious, Curtis. Obviously, you're deeply embedded in the space and you understand it very well. And there's clearly a need for change and evolution in the way that we're serving customers that are trying to move LTL. And I'm sure you see some things changing. And I know you're going to be part of that change. But as of right now, what do you see that's changing in the LTL space that is going to make that experience better?
Good question. I mean, the easy answer, I guess, is the changes to the classification system that the NMFTA have announced and are going to be rolling out over the next several quarters. Just simplifying that and, helping a shipper or a broker that's trying to classify the freight that needs to move correctly. If they can get to that answer, and it's the right answer, quicker and easier, then that's going to be huge, just, incrementally, to make the industry more efficient. And then honestly, like I think kind of what technology is allowing for is, like it used to be that there weren't a ton of TMS options. It was more, I would say, broad but narrow, or broad but shallow. Like, hey, we got to be able to do everything, but we maybe don't do everything as a technology platform super well. Where now, with the power of just APIs and integrating easier, there's better products and tools like Shiplify, like, hopefully some of the stuff that I'm going to be coming out with, and others, to give you the best possible experience as a user in the LTL space. And that just, I think it's, again, a lot of small pieces and building blocks, but as LTL locations are defined better, as electronic BOLs gain momentum, create efficiencies, it's just going to keep getting better. It's a flywheel, right? LTL, LTL is only here because it's a network, it's a system. It doesn't work if it's not a system. So if you know how to navigate that system, you can set things up correctly, and then potentially a lot of things can be automated. I mean, I know you guys are even, you know, going down that path with hundreds of thousands of shipments automated now in your system. So that's the nice thing about it, is it's not as manual and you know, people driven, or it's a bad way to put it, but you know what I mean, like not as many phone calls and emails.
I know what you mean.
It's more, you can build the system and let transactions run through it. You're always going to have some exceptions, but if it's built well, then you're going to have definitely fewer than, you know, if your North Star is just kind of use the cheapest quote every time or something like that.
Yeah, one of the things that you said is really interesting. I joined this industry in 2011, so I only have about 13 years as of next month, actually, in the industry. But
Only.
even then, even then, you know, APIs weren't widely spread in our industry, and the whole idea of integrating with like LTL carriers via via API was kind of a newer thing. There were only a few companies out there doing it. And we started doing it in 2012 ourselves when we built a API-based rating engine. But you know, one of the things that you mentioned is you have all these companies that are really, really good at what they do, like Shiplify, which is one you mentioned, and some of the products you're coming out with. That's one of the powers, I think, for TMS providers now, is that rather than trying to build everything yourself and be the greatest at everything, you don't have to be that anymore. Actually, what that's going to ultimately do, if you take that mindset, is it's going to lead you to a bad software, in my opinion, because if you rely on those who are focused on a specific swim lane that they're in, you can get the best in class software all integrated into a single TMS. And that's really been kind of our vision on it. And same thing with the automation of LTL shipments. And, you know, we're moving into other modes of transportation with that. We've been able to do that because of APIs, because of newer technology, where we're able to automate, you know, hundreds of thousands of loads per year now. But one of the things that I want to just ask clarification on is, when I joined the industry, our founder owned a freight brokerage and still does own a freight brokerage, that's completely separate. He mentioned to me that the class system was going away in 2011. It is 2024, and we're still not there. Do we think that we're actually getting to a point where the class system is going to ultimately go away, and we're going to move to this density-based pricing within the industry?
Yeah, this has been like the hot topic for decades now.
That's why I'm asking. It's like, I'm like, okay, I'll believe it when I see it.
I'm jaded too.
Yeah.
I'm so jaded about it.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff at play here. A lot of different, you know, currents, I guess. One is just the size of the market. There's not a lot of carriers.
Mhm.
They all kind of look, act, sound, and smell the same typically. They're very integrated with the NMFTA that sets the classifications. Obviously, the NMFTA gets input. Well, first and foremost, they collect a lot of like real world data around these products and commodities. So they're not just pulling stuff out of thin air. They do pretty intensive commodity studies. I remember when I was on the dock at Old Dominion, you know, seeing NMFTA people coming through, looking for shipments of specific commodities to just collect data on it. So it's a robust, like, it's a real thing, and I think it's just the industry is very, very entrenched in that. But at the end of the day, it doesn't solve the problem that primarily LTL carrier costs are driven by space in the trailer and not by weight and a freight class, you know, to calculate the cost. So I think the NMFC classes will be around and be a part of it for a long time, and that's great, because they do look at, you know, packaging, configuration, density. They cover all the bases of what does potentially change the cost or risk structure for a carrier, commodity to commodity. So I don't think it can ever completely go away, because, you know, one box with 10 Dell laptops next to one box with some, you know, Cheerios, like, you can't just charge based off space 100% for that, because they have to be handled differently. There's different risks, different values, things like that. So there's always got to be some, I think, some level of classification that's specific to those shipment attributes, but it just needs to get easier and simpler. And nobody should have to go to a big book or a website and start looking at a pile of 8,000 different potentials and then have to get to the right one. Like it just, the application of it, you know, what it stands for, what it's doing, I think is spot on, but the application of it, the user experience kind of sucks. So that's what they're working on.
I remember being trained and seeing that book you're referring to, like in 2011.
Encyclopedia.
He dropped this book, and I'm like, "What industry am I in?" Like,
yeah,
why
I had one down there.
Why do we have a book of classifications? But
yeah.
Anyway,
no, it blew my mind too. When I'd done a couple years like driving and on the dock at Old Dominion, when I got the W&I position and started learning, it's like, yeah, I had no idea. Like, most of the operators in LTL carriers they're just, there's no need for them to learn NMFC items and stuff like that. But it's a whole kind of crazy, you know, very nuanced world. So I think just with the development of technology, you know, carriers are really, really good at quantifying what they're hauling now from a physical space perspective with dimensioning, weights. You know, there's going to be more technology in the terminals, you know, with camera systems that are taking pictures and turning that into data for loading and planning, or even just, you know, OS&D overage shortage, like exceptions, basically finding freight. So as that naturally progresses, like, it's just gonna change the cost structure a little bit, and it's gonna naturally lead, I think, to more intelligent and more options around pricing. It just has to.
Curtis, I want to pick your brain a little bit more on the whole like density-based pricing thing, and this may be a question rooted in my own limited understanding, but from what I do understand, when it comes to like air freight, for example, almost all of the air freight pricing is density-based, or much more than, let's say, LTL over the road stuff. And I'm just curious, from your perspective, why is it so much different with the over the road LTL stuff if the air freight carriers can do it mainly density based? I'm just curious from your perspective why it's not the case with the LTL carriers.
Yeah, I mean, this is just, I don't know a ton about air freight, but what does make sense to me is, if you've ever seen air freight or a picture of it, it's very heavily packaged. It's, you know, they typically have these nets so it doesn't move around. Like, I think it's more like modular. Like, you are truly just selling the space on that plane, and freight's not, you know, they're not stopping and offloading and consolidating like an LTL carrier does. It's just flying from A to B.
Sure.
Plus it's brought to them and then it's picked up from them at the origin destination.
Right.
That's a big piece too. You know, a lot of potential damage or just different, you know, drivers of cost for carriers happen at that pickup and delivery point. So I think it's just, LTL's just, you know, lucky enough that we just have all these potential variables. Like I've always said, it's like customers of LTL kind of have, you know, parcel like expectations around service, but then truckload like expectations around, you know, capabilities, picking up, you know, as a driver, I went into like a paper plant and pulled, you know, 40,000 pounds of paper rolls out of there. So to be able to check both those boxes, like have the agility, the, you know, the tech and just the systems of more of a parcel provider, but then the capability, the strength, the space of a truckload, like it's just a hard niche.
That's a good answer. I didn't even think about it that way, but you're right. It's effectively the air freight is just the line haul. If you want to compare it to, over the, like, they're just worried about that piece. So it's a lot easier. It's like, we're not taking it to a terminal. We're not breaking it down and reconsolidating for final. Like, we're not doing any of that. Right. So
They
that
can
makes
only
sense.
land at certain places. So
Yeah.
Yeah, I would compare air freight more to like container freight on
ships,
ocean liners. Like,
for sure.
Yeah, it's just kind of modular. It's in its little space, and
yeah,
it doesn't play with anybody else's freight.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's a really good point.
Man, just thinking about that.
The
whole thing about parcel and LTL made a lot of sense. We see a lot of it with our clients even. We have clients that are only truckload that try to break into the LTL side, and then they see how difficult it is compared to what they're used to, and then sometimes they stop shortly thereafter. But yeah, go ahead, Mike.
Yeah. So another question for you, Curtis. Obviously we talked a lot about, why people are afraid of LTL and why it's so complex and why it's so difficult and why the customer experience is the way it is and why it needs to improve. However, I know you've seen a lot of people have success with moving LTL freight and building LTL brokerages, and on the TMS side, so have we. What, in your mind, why should people not shy away from LTL? Why should people not be as scared of this, big, scary, mythical thing that we hear about that's so complex? It's like, it's not that bad. I know we talk about it that way, but what's your perspective on that?
I mean, the reason for me that I think should be the reason is just because it's so awesome what it can do. The leverage, like, you can shoot an email or submit a shipment request online for one pallet that needs to go across the country, and like, you'll have a company pick up, load it up. You're only going to get charged, maybe a few $100s depending on what it is, how much it weighs. But like, that's amazing that these carriers are out there maintaining these flywheels and have enough density in their network to be able to do that at such a low price. Like, what would it cost you to rent a U-Haul and drive across the country? In time too, time and money.
Right.
So that's why it stings, and that's why there's, high risk if people think of it that way, because there's high reward as well. It's not an easy thing that's being done. So yeah, you're right. I mean, a lot of people have been really successful, definitely on the brokerage side,
right.
growing big LTL brokerages or managed transportation, services. I think to really succeed there, you've got to, it comes down to good LTL carrier relationships. There's no way around that. There's no shortcut to that. Like, I tell people all the time in some of the consulting work I do through rateHERO right now, there's no, like, I can teach anybody any of the knowledge that I've got or how to move the numbers around, but I can't teach you, the length of the relationships and the trust and the reputation that I've built. So that there's just no way around that. And I think it's a good thing because it makes it, it's a vetted industry. You kind of have to come in and prove yourself a little bit, or be open-minded to understanding just how this whole network works. And then a lot of the crazies are left on the outside. So yeah, there's a lot of risk, but there's a ton of reward. And I think I did a graphic or visual on LinkedIn a couple of years ago about this. But like, people like to obviously complain if there's a claim or cost, extra cost, freight goes missing, whatever. But it's like, the way I see it is they've already gotten their ROI on that.
Yeah.
With like the 50 previous shipments that didn't have a problem, that they got to ship for $200-300 on average instead of a dedicated truck, or having your own truck. So you're already saving so much money that when you get to something that goes wrong, you gotta like zoom out and look at it in the big picture, because yeah, claims are going to happen. Like, when you're packing 20,000 pounds worth of different companies' freight that's all in different shapes and sizes and weights into a 27 or 28-foot trailer, like, you're going to have mishaps. It just is what it is.
It's a really good answer. It's the last piece that you mentioned is just such a human experience in business, where it's like, you know, a vendor can do right by you 99 times out of 100, and they mess up 1% of the time, and you only focus on the 1%, right? It happens in software as a TMS provider. It happens in, like, even at like a restaurant, right? It happens in every industry where people are serving people. So it's really good perspective and a prescient reminder. It's like, yeah, we might mess up, you know, however much small percentage of the time, but look at all the other times we got it right. And that's where true partnerships are built, which you alluded to in the LTL space. It's like, hey, Old Dominion, as an example, you guys had a few shipments where I had a claim on, but damn, you guys delivered a few hundred shipments for me perfectly before at a great rate. Thank you. We appreciate it. Right. And people often forget these things. Right. And it's, I'm just glad you pointed that out.
Yeah. I mean, that kind of makes me remember just, I think, one of the best ways of looking at LTL, especially comparing it with truckload. Don't look at the shipment level. Look at the macro, like the whole account. If you're a broker that's helping, you know, LTL shippers, or you're an LTL shipper yourself, like, there's too many transactions. There's too many small moving pieces. You can't live and die shipment by shipment. You've got to string together the system and look at the framework and the value and the cost there. So that's my rule of thumb, whether anyone's starting LTL as a brokerage, like, from a sales standpoint, from an efficiency standpoint, keeping, you know, stickiness with your customers and showing that value, it's got to be at an account level.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Mike and I talk a lot about that subject in regards to there's a lot of companies that focus on the micro, like the small issues that occur, rather than the macro of, like, the overall business and the efficiency and everything else positive that it brings. And what we have seen, and we've seen hundreds of brokers obviously utilizing our software, the ones that are growing the fastest, the ones that are actually showing true value, are the ones that are focused on the entirety, not the one-offs. And they're running their business based off data analytics. They're running it based on, you know, how are we doing overall? Not, hey, this one shipment, this one thing had a problem. We need to put all of our energy and effort onto that one issue, where, you know, you could actually technically cause your business a much larger loss, because you're looking at the actual cost to address it, or just say, hey, we're going to eat the cost on that. Let's go to the next one, because 99.5% of this is all successful. We have these one-offs here and there. We should probably just ignore those and keep moving along. But it's an interesting perspective for sure.
Yeah, that's a good point. And along those lines, how does that impact you guys? Because I'm sure you get a lot of customer function requests and things
No, never.
they want you to build. So, I mean, that creates, you got to have your own decision-making system there too, because you can't be chasing every little exception or shiny object. You know?
It's really interesting on the software side of things, because we probably get 10 plus requests a day from our client base.
Really?
And it's a lot. And what is not really taken into consideration, and there's a real life example of this that we learned from yesterday, but is, what does it take to build all of this? It's not cheap. Engineering is not cheap. It costs a lot, and it takes a lot of planning, you know, design, and all those different things when you're introducing something. And so we have to be very, very selective on what we build. And the questions I always ask when someone's recommending something is, what is the ROI to you? Like, what are you going to gain in hard dollars if we build this and introduce it inside of the TMS? Is it going to make you more efficient? Is it going to make your team more efficient? Or is it really just a one-off request that came up because of one conversation that happened between you and your shipper? And so there's so many things that you have to take into consideration when building software, that I think a lot of that goes, you know, for granted, or not really thought of from the other side of, you know, we're serving hundreds of brokers and billions of dollars freight that run through the system. So it's a lot.
Yeah. So I guess that really drives the requirement for for you all to understand the industry that your customers work
Yeah.
in too, just so you can really prioritize and direct the flow of development correctly.
Yeah.
All right.
Are you
got
guys?
anything
You're not in the
else?
same room. You're not in the same room, right?
No.
Are you
We
in the same
share a
building?
wall. We share a wall. So like
Okay.
right behind my camera and right behind Cam's camera, there's a wall, and there's acoustic foam on there because I tend to be quite loud. There's
Oh.
acoustic foam on both
I
sides.
need to
Yeah.
double that up. It
They
needs
still
to be
hear me.
twice as thick.
So
I just
let's
noticed
go
the
ahead.
chairs.
Let's go ahead and wrap this up. Curtis, you've been awesome on here. Before we let you go, we want to give you a chance to, tell people where to find you. Obviously you're doing some really cool stuff. It's no secret you're, in my mind, an LTL guru. And so, how do people find you? How do they do business with you? What can people do to get a hold of you?
I'm probably the most easily found on LinkedIn. All my different projects have, Understand LTL as a website, rateHERO as a website. I've got a personal site, but just, come to LinkedIn. I'm always game for an LTL conversation, question, problem to solve or help solve. So find me there, and I'm just trying to make. It's going to take a while, and there's a lot to do, but I'm just trying to make the LTL experience smoother and better one day at a time.
Yeah, well, we appreciate you coming on, Curtis. Thank you so much for joining us today.
This was fun.
Curtis.
It flew by. All right, guys.
All
Thanks,
right,
man.
talk to you,
Talk
Curtis.
soon.
Right. Wow, man. He has a tremendous amount of experience. We already knew that, but getting to unpack some of that is it's incredible how much people know about this industry and how much you and I have to learn still about this industry.
Well, my favorite part is he is taking on a space that people are scared of, right? And
absolutely.
I don't say that lightly, right? Everyone's like, "Oh, forget about LTL. We don't touch it." The amount of prospects I talk to that are brokers that say we don't touch LTL, and people that embrace those hard, complex things and almost find a sick joy in it, I get that, right? Like I understand that, and I appreciate and respect that. So I think it's pretty damn cool. That was a good conversation for sure.
Yeah, it was great.
What are you doing this weekend, man?
Going to Bass Pro Shop tomorrow morning.
Nah, I want to go.
Yeah. Gonna go buy some new camping gear. We're taking the kids up to Big Bear to go camping in 2 weeks. So we're gonna get some stuff for that and hang out with the kids, man. That's it, pretty much. What about you?
Actually, I'm dropping the kids at the grandparents tomorrow. I'm doing a date night with the wife tomorrow. Date night.
Those are rare, man.
Right? Dude, it's been I can't even remember the last one. So yeah, dropping the kids off tomorrow, dinner and a movie. Should be good, man. Yeah.
What movie?
Long Legs. Have you seen that? The trailer for that?
No.
Some like thriller / horror movie, but like I don't know. It's supposed to be super scary and exciting.
You'll have your wife with you to keep you safe. So
she's gonna comfort me, right?
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining us today. We really appreciate it. We hope you all have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you next Friday.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.